The Recollections of L.F. Parsons, written 1856. At daylight on the morning of the 3rd of June, 1856, Major Hoyt and I galloped to Blackjack, where I tendered my services to Captain Brown, and was immediately put on guard, and I was the only post sentinel who challenged Colonel Sumner when he came to release our prisoners. Again, sometime in the latter part of August, I met John Brown in Lawrence. He told me he came to get help to defend Osawatomie. I told him to try the Stubbs, which was a Lawrence Sharps rifle company to which I belonged. He replied that he had, but they would not leave Lawrence. I told him I would get my rifle and go with him. He said he would surely show me how to fight if the rascals would give him a chance. When I went for my gun, Lieutenant Cutler asked what I was going to do. I told him, and he said, "The guns belong to the company and shall not be taken away." Brown borrowed a Sharps rifle of Captain Harvey for me, and I went with him to his camp near Osawatomie. August 30th, 1856, we were camped a half-mile east of that town, at Mr. Crane's place. While we were cooking breakfast, before sunrise, a man dashed into camp, saying the border ruffians were coming from the west, and had just killed Fred Brown and David Garrison near Mr. Adair's. Brown started right off and said, "Men, come on." He did not say go. I started with him, and it was some minutes before any overtook us. While we were hurrying on by ourselves, Brown said, "Parsons, were you ever under fire?" I replied, "No, but I obey orders. Tell me what you want me to do." He said, "Take care to end life well than to live long." When we reached the blockhouse in the village, he motioned to several to go in, myself with the rest. He then said to me, "Hold your position as long as possible and hurt them all you can, while we will go into the timber and annoy them from that side." I fastened the door with a large bar and thought all secure. Soon firing commenced up the Mares des Cygnes, where Brown had gone. There was a second floor in the blockhouse, and part of the boys had gone up there. While we all selected our porthole, Brown had drawn their attentions that we were not molested. After some 20 minutes or so, someone on the second floor called out, "They have a cannon, and will blow us all to pieces in here. I am going to get out of this." I said, "No, you must stay." Old man Austin said, "Stay here, and let them blow us to hell and back again." I went upstairs to get a better view of the enemy, and before I knew it, the door was open and most of the men gone. I don't even know where they went. Austin and I think 2 others, 4 in all, then went up the Mares des Cygnes River in the timber and joined Brown at the fight on his left. Klein had gone before this. We had not been there long when we all fell back across the river. Partridge was shot while in the river. At this place the water was deep, and I said to Austin, "I cannot swim with my gun," which I soon threw into the river. Soon we both ran down the river. The bank was so high, so we were most of the time out of sight. I ran too fast for the old man Austin, and he called out to me not to leave him. As we approached the old sawmill, the bank became lower, and we were seen by the ruffians, 3 of whom were after us. I told Austin that I could see the bottom. I would cross. He replied, "I won't run another inch," and dropped down behind a large log. I waded through, but the opposite bank was steep and high, and as I was clinging to the brush and scrambling up, I heard the words, "Halt, halt, halt," in rapid procession, and immediately several guns were fired and the dirt torn up my side. I was on the bank in a twinkle, and returned their salute as well as I could. 2 were putting their spurs into their horses the best they could. 1 horse bore an empty saddle, and 1 man was kicking his last kick, and Austin jumped up and came over to me. As we went up the river, he told me that they did not see him, but passed rather in front of him, and all shot at me, while he shot one in the back just as the very moment they shot at me. In an hour or so after this, we got together at a log house on the north side of the river. Dr. Updegraff was then in the house, shot in the thigh. Brown was with him. But before we got together, the smoke of the burning town was seen. They burned 29 houses. The next day we moved to the south side, to a Mr. Hauser's. We commenced to fell timber round a place selected by Brown as possessing natural advantages for defense. We felled the treetops out and trimmed them with sharp points. Most of the men became sick with the ague, and work was suspended. Soon after this I too was taken with fever, and Brown hauled me to Lawrence. I was very sick. Brown asked me if he should take me to the hospital. I told him that I would rather go to Mrs. Killam's, a boarding house where I had previously lodged, if she would take care of me. He went and found her, and returned saying, "Mrs. Killam says, bring him here. I would do as much for Luke Parsons as for my own son." Under her care I recovered so that I was again under Brown's command. I shouldered my gun and marched out to meet the 2,800 men who came up from Missouri in September. If I remember aright, in about a year after this I went with Johnny Cook to Tabor, Iowa, where I saw Brown, and from Tabor went on to Springdale. I also take pride in saying I was under arms in Topeka on July 4th, 1856, when Colonel Sumner dispersed the legislature. I was with Captain Walker in the capture of Colonel Titus near Lecompton. I claim to be the man who shot Colonel Titus. I was near our Captain Chambray when he was struck by the fatal ball. I received a very sore but slight wound there. It was on my skin, made by a very small ball or buckshot. Kansas was admitted into the Union in 1861 with every inch free soil, and still the object for which Brown fought was not entirely accomplished. I enlisted in the Union Army and fought for nearly 4 years until that object was fully attained, and there was nowhere to be found a slave to clank his chains by the graves of Monticello or the shades of Mount Vernon.